A lot of fun working out in the garden, and today I'm going to show you how to plant some asparagus, and we're going to use some 2-year-old roots. What I like to do to start off with is I'll dig a trench about 6 to 8 inches deep, so about the depth of my shovel is how deep this trench is, and we're just going to plant a few right here. If we were doing a lot of asparagus, we'd do a much larger trench, but usually about 6 to 8 inches deep is about how you want to go. Down the bottom of the trench, I like to put a slow release fertilizer like the bone meal. Bone meal is a very slow release phosphorus. It's a natural form of phosphorus. It's going to break down very gradually through the rest of this year, probably even feed them through next year as well too. So we're going to sprinkle probably about a teaspoon per plant down in the bottom, and we'll kind of work it into the soil as well too. So I'm just going to sprinkle that down in the bottom as we go along. Need a little bit more down there, and then I'll just take my gloved hand, just kind of work it into the soil just a little bit, just so it kind of gets down into that root zone where the roots are going to grow. And these are 2-year-old roots, so these asparagus are already 2 years old. If we were doing them from seed, we'd have to wait for 3 years to be able to harvest and use the asparagus. But if we're using 2-year-old roots, they'll produce next year and we can start harvesting next year. It's usually about year 5 through 10 that really gives us the best production, maybe 5 through actually 15. So for about 10 to 12 years is when they'll really produce. But these 2-year-old roots, we don't want to, when we put them down in the trench, we don't want to spread the roots out like an octopus. We actually just want to lay them down. So we're just going to lay those down in the bottom of the trench, just so they're not quite touching each other. And there's a crown. So here's a little bit bigger root right there. There's a crown right here. Right on the top is right where the asparagus is going to come out. So we want that crown kind of pointing up. So as I lay them down in the bottom of the trench, we want that crown kind of pointing up, and they can just kind of overlap just a little bit. We'll put one more down in there. All right. With the bone meal down on the bottom and the asparagus laid out like that, we don't want to cover them up all the way now. We're just going to cover them up maybe 2 or 3 inches so that they have time to come up through that. So I'll just do the 2 or 3 inches and just barely cover those up with that much, and let them start to grow up through. And once they start to grow up through that soil, then I'll cover them up another 2 or 3 inches, and then once they start growing up through that, then I'll finish covering them up. So we're basically going to just cover them up about 1/3 of the way right now, let them start to grow up through that. It might take a week or two, maybe even a little bit longer, but once they start coming up through there, then we'll cover them up another little bit, and then finally finish them up in maybe a month or 6 weeks. They'll be ready to go. So usually what I like to do is water them a little bit before I cover them up. Just give them just a little bit of moisture just to kind of get things going. And asparagus like to be watered very thoroughly, but then let them dry out afterwards. So after we cover them up with just a little bit of soil, I'm going to water them again so that soil is nice and saturated. Alright, that looks like about 2 inches or so. So we're just going to cover those up about 1/3 of the way, and then water them again. The asparagus like really well drained soil, and they like a lot of sun, so you want to have them in a full sunny location and a good saturation there. And it's important that they get good drainage. So once they get established and get going, we'll only water them maybe once every week, once every 10 days, saturate that area really well, and then let them dry out in between waterings, and that'll work perfectly. So if you enjoy asparagus, very easy to do, don't need a whole lot of space. I'd recommend at least 25 to 50 plants to really get a good crop going for the next season and for the years to come. And with a little bit of work, you can have a great asparagus harvest every spring.